Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar. It looks like we're right on time here, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So first, let's just welcome you here today to today's webinar hosted by Travefy Academy with our amazing guest from Special Needs Group, which is also known as Special Needs at Sea. So both same company, different names, just if you hear us refer one of the other, same company. And who we have today is Karen Leonard, and she's a travel industry ambassador who's going to share her knowledge with us. And we are so excited to learn more. But first, before I introduce our guest, though, I do want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Stephanie Grice, and I'm the Senior Client Champion and Education Coordinator here at Travefy. But I do want to give you a quick plug. I do this every time, so if you have been on these webinars, you're like, I've heard this, Stephanie, but in case if you're brand new to Travefy Academy webinars, what to expect with today's webinar and what is Travefy Academy. So what's exciting is Travefy gets to partner with experts across the travel industry to provide free educational webinars through Travefy Academy. So these webinars are not commercial in nature to promote any organization, nor does Travefy ever accept compensation for partnerships. So Travefy Academy truly just exists to provide powerful educational experiences and just really fulfill our mission to power the success of travel professionals. So today's webinar is for informational purposes only, and we don't actually talk about Travefy and the software, so you won't really see any of that here today, but instead just talking about the travel industry as a whole instead. So really what our hope for Travefy Academy is to become a resource for travel advisors from a wide range of perspectives and different experience levels, like you're going to find in today's webinar and other ones as well. So I do want to mention that if you go to our website, academy.travefy.com, you can find previous webinars. We'll also post a recording of this one on there as well, so you can check those out and just kind of see what's new, what's upcoming, what webinars are coming in the future. But a couple things for housekeeping here for today's webinar is I did mention that this webinar is being recorded. So as long as you registered, you are going to receive an email automatically after this webinar concludes, and you will be able to watch the recording. So if you have any friends or colleagues who might not be able to join, or if a client walks in and you have to take off, totally fine. You're going to get all the information after this automatically. So now, and then the last thing, actually, this is really important too. So we will have time at the end to do questions. So we'll get to ask Karen all of your amazing questions. So feel free, there is a question box provided. So as the presentation's going, feel free to put any questions that you think of, and then that way we can ask those to Karen at the end as well. Now, for the moment we've been waiting for, I want to introduce our special guest, Karen Leonard, and kind of tell you a little bit more about Special Needs Group, and AKA Special Needs at Sea. So since 2007, Special Needs Group has been achieving unprecedented milestones in providing those with special needs and or mobility challenges with the ability to travel, just whether it be across the globe or within their own area. So from the time it was launched, Special Needs Group has completed over 500,000 of different orders and really just making dreams come true for individuals with special needs or, any mobility challenges. So this is going to include maybe your slow walkers or the baby boomer, different segment of the population, and really just anyone to help the accessible travel segment in this really fast growing market segment in travel. So in addition to providing special needs equipment, Special Needs Group continuously raises awareness of special needs travel through newsletters, webinars, blogs, social media tools, panel discussions, and presentations. So actually over 5,900 professional travel advisors have become certified accessible travel advocates through Special Need Group's groundbreaking certified accessible travel advocate program, which launched in 2011, which allows professional travel advisors to become conversant and just with the accessible travel market segment through online study and testing. So a little bit of what you're getting here today and giving you the opportunity to ask these questions to really hone into this market and help your clients experience, travel to their fullest. So with that being said, Karen, welcome to today's webinar. We're so excited to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, and I want to thank you and Travefy Academy for offering me the opportunity to share some information and really kind of hopefully open up some eyes and awareness to accessible travel and just how you all as travel advisors can change people's lives. And it really does make a huge difference if you become a more proactive partner in addressing this marketplace. But just quickly, a little bit more about me. I have been in the industry for about, for actually almost 14 years now. I was a travel advisor. I was a travel sales coach to independent franchises and independent contractors. So I know what your lifestyle is like. I know how busy and crazy you are. So I just want to thank you all for taking some time out today to join us and to maybe learn a little bit more about how you can make a difference in the world. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So some of the things that I want to talk about today is I want to first of all right-size your expectations. No one here expects you to become a medical expert or an equipment expert or anything like that. We just mainly want you to be aware of what's available for people that may have challenges when they're traveling. We want to introduce you to the world's fastest growing demographic, which is going to be the slow walkers and the baby boomer generation. We're going to hopefully help you enhance your existing sales skills and teach you how to differentiate yourself by being able to offer advice and opportunities for people who never really thought maybe they could travel or maybe have stopped traveling. So you're going to have those opportunities to share with them. And then we're going to ask you to become a certified accessible travel advocate. And trust me, our certification program, you're going to hear a lot of the information in this presentation is already on the certification. The certification is not a commercial for special needs group or special needs at sea. It's really more of an educational certification. So it's a really wonderful thing to do to enhance your knowledge of how to help your client base. I love this picture. We do want you to serve the largest and fastest growing segment of the travel industry worldwide. And look at this guy. I mean, this is an actual picture. When you talk about the sky being the limit, if you help people travel the world that maybe never thought they could, not that they're going to go out and do this, but they may feel that they're doing this. They may feel that, really the sky is the limit for them. And to think that you're the person that helped them discover that feeling, it's pretty incredible. So we made you look. Here's our disability dog. And the reason we have him on here is because when you think about the special needs community, they really don't want to be treated any differently than anyone else. Once that their special need has been addressed and worked with, basically you just put them in a scooter, give them a rolly bag, give them a nice bag of Doritos, put a little jaunty scarf on them and send them on their way. They're not going to, need anything extra from you. They don't want to be pitied. They don't want to be, we as travel professionals tend to be very empathetic and sympathetic, and that's not what they want. They just want, straightforward answers, and then just to be left to enjoy. So when you became a person who sells travel, a travel advisor, you became an industry ambassador, whether you realized it or not, and you do become or have become a provider of value. It's up to you to show the world what your value is and how you fulfill people's needs. You're also a problem solver. I mean, how many of you have had to deal with friends and family? Oh, this and that and the other thing. Well, this is just another aspect of that. And most importantly, you become a brand manager. You are your own brand, regardless of whether you belong to a host company or have, an affiliation with someone. You still are your own individual brand manager. So what you say and how you conduct business and with whom you conduct business is really a reflection on what brand you have chosen for yourself. So that's one of the things I wanted you to think about. People always say, well, I want to concentrate on family travel. I want to concentrate on luxury travel or whatever it is. People with special needs are involved in all of those types of travel. So this should not be a special niche for you. Some people it is. That's what they truly want to concentrate on. But more so, it's more about understanding that proactively these folks can be involved in any aspect of travel that you want to sell. So it's really, really critical to ask the right questions to make sure that you are aware, because a lot of people with special needs don't travel. They don't realize services exist. They don't know that travel advisors can have knowledge. The people that do travel with special needs, a lot of them feel like they're tasked to find all of these resources themselves. So that's why it's so important for us to understand who they are, where they come from, how we can help. So, I mean, really, as I was saying before, there's not just a target market, just a small slice of life here. We're talking about families with young children and returning veterans, the elderly, people pre and post surgery. You know, we're not even just talking about people that are permanently disabled or have a permanent special need, even temporary people, like the pre and post surgery, or people that have an occasional mobility condition, like maybe I fell down and broke my leg. So those things can halt people or can cause maybe vacation cancellations. So being aware of what's available for them can alleviate those stresses for your clients. Slow walkers are probably our largest market at this point, and they probably present the largest challenge for a travel advisor. And the reason for that is that these folks tend to live a more sedentary lifestyle at home, but they may not need or use equipment there because they live close to home. They do their errands, their doctor visits, or whatever close to home. They don't necessarily work anymore, but if they do, they have a fairly sedentary kind of lifestyle, fairly sedentary kind of job. Obviously, these are not the people that are out rock climbing every weekend and doing that kind of thing. So they're not going to present to you when they talk to you about travel. They're not going to present to you with, hey, I need a scooter, or, hey, I need a wheelchair, or, hey, this is what's going on. So this is why it's so important that you become proactive. So we have the slow walker situation where they're not going to present to you with their equipment needs. Then we have the people who are maybe never have traveled before, so they're not even coming to you. Their friends and family aren't even thinking of them when they're talking about travel plans because they're used to them having to stay home. This is why it's so important. Again, I'm going to say it for you to be proactive. And then we talk about chronic disabilities. I mean, disability happens to everyone. It doesn't care who you love, where you worship, if you worship at all, who you are, what background you have. It doesn't care. If it's going to happen, it happens. So that's why it's so important to realize that there may be something going on that you're not aware of, because most of our business happens over the phone. Okay? So then we had we're fortunate to have the Americans with Disabilities Act that was enacted in 1990 and then amended, beefed up in 2008. We still have a long way to go, guys, but if you think about it, it's only been since 1990 where physical barriers were removed. So cuts in the curb to allow for scooters and wheelchairs and things like that. Braille printing on ATM machines and grab bars and things in public restrooms. All of those things started happening around 1990. It hasn't been that long. But the whole idea behind the ADA was to allow people with physical issues and other kinds of issues to live a complete and full life, just like everyone else. It's the law prohibits discrimination due to physical challenges like mobility, stamina challenges, sight, hearing, speech impairments. But it can also protect those that have more of the invisible disabilities, like the emotional, like the learning disorders. We call them kind of like the ABC, ADD and all of those kind of spelled out or abbreviated conditions. Those things are protected by the ADA. So we're really glad that we have these sets of laws. Unfortunately, a lot of places in the world don't have anything like this. So that's the other thing that's so important for us as travel advisors. It's to counsel folks with disabilities and special needs that when they travel to different countries, say they go to France or Italy or whatever it is, that those laws aren't in existence. So they may not have the same comforts and accommodations made for them. And it's really important that they understand that. Not that, that they can't travel there. It's just that they have the right expectations. And that's our job as a travel advisor anyway. It's to really kind of make sure that our clients understand what they're getting into. It also protects your civil rights in your workplace and government services. So all of your, motor vehicle, Department of Motor Vehicle, those kind of places, your city hall, federal government buildings, whatever, public and commercial facilities, your malls, your restaurants, and all that kind of stuff, telecommunication services, of course, for the hearing impaired and so forth. And then this set of laws also covers enforcement. So, there's a whole group of, a whole department that really just checks to make sure that all of these things are put into place for any new or retrofitted buildings and businesses. Think about it. Buildings, facilities, transit vehicles. I mean, how many of you have thought that even the monorail at Disney has to be ADA compliant? We go through life, those of us who are able-bodied and don't have some kind of special need, we go through life not even really thinking about it. Somebody I work with all the time says, you don't think about these things until you have to think about these things. So what I'm trying to do is just make you aware that these things are going on all the time. People with a special need, people with a permanent disability are struggling to work through these issues all the time. It's up to us to help make this one aspect of life, travel, be that much easier. So what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about 20% of the United States population, 63 million people who deal with a permanent type of disability or special need. That's an amazing amount of people. That's why I say this is not a niche. This is really something that incorporates all aspects of travel. You need to be aware. This market has about $220 billion in discretionary income, and they spend $13.6 billion a year on travel. This is just in the United States market alone. It doesn't include Canada. It doesn't include worldwide. This is just here in the United States. Travelers with disabilities take 32 million vacations a year. Over 24 million Americans with disabilities said they would travel more frequently if they felt that their needs were better met. And that's what I was telling you about, where I'm saying to you that a lot of people with these needs that travel feel like they have to find these resources on their own, because there aren't travel advisors out there that are willing to learn a little bit, to know that services exist. 85% of them travel with others. Remember, that means that they're traveling with able-bodied people. So it's not like it's a very small market. Think of yourself. Would you travel by yourself? Probably not. I mean, you might, but most times you're going to travel with friends and family. Well, so do they. So it's a huge travel market. And 1 in 5 families where no one in the household is over 65 or 65 years old has a special need person or someone with a permanent disability. If you add in the household members that are 65 and older, that drops to 1 in 4 families out of the number of families in the United States. This is a fantastic opportunity, but I'm going to ask you, what is your current piece of this pie? How are you currently dealing with this? If you tell me, I'm not dealing with it at all, then this is the time to learn. This is the time, and I would strongly recommend that you learn more. Take certifications, not just ours, but there's others out there as well. The mature American market, do you believe this? They plan 340 million trips a year. Baby boomers are turning 65 at the rate of 10,000 people a day. That started in January of 2011 and will continue until December 31 of 2030. That's 3.65, oops, the slide's wrong, but 3.65 million people a year are turning 65. This is the hugest and fastest growing demographic that we have in the travel community today. So again, it's really critical to ask the right questions. You need to understand what it is that what challenge your traveler has, and how to best provide them with the most comfortable solution. Because you can say, let's say you have a client who comes to you and says, you know what, I'm going out of a cruise in Fort Lauderdale and I'd like an oceanfront hotel. And you say, okay, well, An oceanfront hotel is an oceanfront hotel is an oceanfront hotel, correct? Unless that oceanfront room is not on the oceanfront side. This is still an oceanfront hotel. This is a beautiful Diplomat Hotel in Hollywood, Florida, but half of the hotel faces a street. So you're still in an oceanfront hotel, so you need to make sure that you understand what exactly it is that they need. Different types of equipment. We have here on the screen, we have a wheelchair and a scooter. Very different from the third one, which is a power chair. There's rollators and walkers and then rollators, excuse me. And then we have our Joy on the Beach wheelchair, which is a wonderful thing. It's got air-filled tires, and somebody can push someone down to the beach for the very first time in their life. It's amazing. And then we have, of course, bathroom products, shower benches, commode chairs, patient lifts, lift chairs, hospital beds. People don't realize that we can put lift chairs and hospital beds in a cabin on most cruise ships. If that's how the person sleeps better, we can do that. We have oxygen needs at the bottom. So there's a lot of different ways that we can help you accommodate, or that people can become more comfortable in traveling. These equipment pieces are out there for them. Something I definitely need you to understand is that with most mobility equipment, it comes in 3 sizes. So you'll see we have our wheelchair, scooter, and power chair here. And you'll see standard, it says up to 249 pounds for that person to be comfortably accommodated in that size. That person would weigh up to 249 pounds. The heavy duty is up to 349, and then bariatric is up to 500. And on the scooter, it's up to 450, as well as the power chair. But you'll notice that the bariatric wheelchair, the bariatric scooter, and all 3 sizes of the power chair are written in red. And why is that? We call those the big 5. And the reason that they're highlighted is because every single one of those 5 pieces must be used, if you're using them on a cruise ship, in an accessible sized cabin. They will not fit through a doorway on a regular cabin, okay? Bathroom doorways or whatever. They just will not be comfortable, or cannot even go into a regular standard sized cabin. So that's why it's so important for you to be proactive. You need to ask every single person that you talk to, is there anyone in your traveling party or anyone you think might want to travel with you that has any special needs, such as mobility or oxygen or any other special needs that I should be aware of? You need to have that conversation or ask that question right up front, maybe right after you've confirmed their contact information, before you even get into what itinerary or where they want to go, what their budget is. You want to have that conversation, because if you're booking someone on a cruise and you find out they need a bariatric scooter after you've booked them, and you've booked them into a standard size cabin, you're going to have a problem, because that scooter will not fit into that cabin. They won't be able to get in there at all. So that's why it's so important, again, for us to be proactive. I also want you to know that there are 2 types of wheelchairs. Most people think a wheelchair is a wheelchair is a wheelchair. Well, we have the self-propelled, which obviously we're all familiar with those. The person who is sitting in the chair can actually propel themselves. They have the big wheels so that they can use their arms and move forward and back and so forth. The companion and transport chairs, what you see a lot of times in hospitals, when they're transporting someone who is being discharged from the hospital, you'll notice that it has brakes on the handles. That means that this requires someone to push the individual that's in the chair. So that's why the brakes are on the handles. It's under the control of the person who's actually pushing the chair. So this is not something that can be really self-mobilized. So that's why it's so important for you to understand. You don't have to be an expert but to be aware that these differences exist. We also have, there also exist foldable scooters. And I will tell you this, if you do sell cruises and you sell Cunard, these are the only kind of scooters that they will allow in a standard cabin. They don't allow the scooter that you saw in the previous slide. It must be a foldable scooter. So that's something to be aware of. It's also a comfort factor for some people, especially maybe if they're doing a land trip. They might prefer a foldable scooter that will take up a lot less room. So just be aware that they do exist. There's something that can make that journey more comfortable for that traveler. there are special requests available through our company, but just to show you the kinds of things that are available. Mini refrigerators to keep medication at a consistent temperature. Those refrigerators that are in hotel rooms and cruise cabins and so forth, they're not necessarily calibrated to make sure that they maintain a consistent temperature. And sometimes the medication that people use is so sensitive that it has to be a calibrated refrigerator. That's something that can be offered to them. We do incontinence supplies and certain supplies for service animals. We've even delivered organic baby food before for someone. And we do provide braille and hearing services, but typically those kinds of things are going to be in the refrigerators. Those kinds of things, you're going to go through a cruise line that's then going to refer back to us or whomever, and those arrangements are made directly with the cruise line or hotel provider. So of our certification, you've kind of gotten the information, as I told you before. A lot of this is in the certification test, if you will. Our Module 3 of our certification is so wonderful because it really kind of gives you the opportunity to hear conversations between a travel advisor and a potential client about the concerns and other issues that may come up and how they're addressed, how the travel advisor speaks with that client to alleviate any fears or doubts that they may have about travel. Truly, it's so important, again, to ask the right questions, but to be knowledgeable enough that that person knows, hey, I put my trust in the right person. And that's why it's so critical. When you ask the right questions, you demonstrate that knowledge. As Stephanie mentioned when she introduced us, my company, we have over 5,900 people who are certified with us, and I'm so proud of that fact because the certification hasn't been around that long, and we are actually just a couple of people away from 6,000. So it's a great certification. You can, once you take it, I mean, there's no cost in it. There's no financial benefit to us at all. It's just an educational thing. But you can then, this logo that's here, you can probably display that on all of your marketing to let people know that, hey, I know a little bit about this and I can work with you. So just as Stephanie kind of alluded to, we are the leading global provider of wheelchair, scooter, oxygen, and other special equipment rentals. But we do offer a purchase if anybody wants one. I know I'm not really supposed to do this, but I just want you to be aware that these services do exist. Regardless of who you're talking to, what kind of need they might have, we always tell you to don't say no, that can't be done. Don't discourage somebody from traveling until you do a little bit more research or, point that person in the direction of a service like ours. Hopefully, we prefer to work with the travel advisors to work with your clients, through you. And that is our preferred method. So hopefully you would be finding out from us, is this available? Is this something that can be done for this person? So we do try to be your best travel partner. So with that being said, I want to thank you so much for attending today. And I'm going to throw it back to Stephanie. But first, before I do that, I just want to mention our contact information is on the screen. We have our marketing email box, agents@specialneedsgroup.com. If you have any questions or anything like that about how to market, how to do a trade show or whatever, please feel free. We do have our extensions on here, myself and Jimmy, and our website if you wanted to check more into the services that are available. We have lots of information out there. We have newsletters where we feature accessible destinations and things like that. So we have a lot of general information on our website that you might find helpful. So thank you, Stephanie. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, thank you so much. That was so much to learn, and it really does just highlight the understanding that there's services like this out there, and knowing, how to cater best to your clients. We actually had a couple people said, so one person had mentioned that they had a bride who, I think it was that she might have broke her arm a couple weeks before, and so they had to do a little working around with that. But then Lori also mentioned, she said, I was thrilled to find out that Special Needs at Sea would be able to help a cruise client of mine that needed a wedge style pillow. So even little things like that, just which is just so cool. So we did have a lot of really great questions here, so I want to dive into those as well for you, Karen, here. And the first one, so one question, the first one that came in was from Roberta, and said, I have a client with a 4-year-old with Down syndrome seeking a cruise. Are there some cruise lines that cater better to this need than others?
That's a very good question. I would say to you, of all the cruise lines out there, they all lack. I will be honest with you. I'm going to tell you, it's really going to fall on the travel advisor to do as much preparation as possible with that person. But of all the cruise lines out there, I would say that Royal Caribbean is probably the one that is most in tune with special needs, especially for a family. Obviously, if you get into luxury products, you can do a lot more, but Royal Caribbean definitely works well with families, or is probably the best one I would recommend.
Awesome, thanks. And another one here from Joan. Are there any considerations with respect to purchasing travel insurance for clients with existing disabilities?
Excuse me. Again, a good question. Not to my knowledge. I will tell you just from our perspective, all of our equipment, the pricing for it includes loss or damage insurance for the equipment, so your client does not need to add it to their travel protection for that reason. I am not aware of any particular insurance company that offers any kind of special dispensation or accommodation for people with special needs. Even though we have the ADA here in the United States, we have a long way to go to making this more mainstream.
Awesome. And yeah, and that's so interesting too with the ADA. I know, I'm sure we have a lot of agents on here from Canada too as well, and just
Mm.
always so interesting. So it's important to, I guess, look into that and realize what is offered and where they're traveling. So another question here, and we had a couple people kind of ask a similar question is, do you have any tips for bringing up the subject of potential mobility or disability issues with clients? Because I know you mentioned that to ask that at the very beginning, but do you have any tips for just kind of approaching that conversation?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of questions. In fact, on our website, there's a list of questions you can ask, but here's some just in general. You can say, do you plan any excursions while you're traveling? Is there anyone that feels like they might have trouble keeping up? Have you cruised before? If so, did anybody have any difficulties getting around the ship, or having other difficulties like standing suddenly, rising from a seated position? Did anybody have any trouble navigating stairs, that kind of thing? But you do want to have that conversation as early as possible in the qualifying process. Because again, like I said, if you find that they need particular equipment, it's going to steer you towards accommodations for them.
Great. And then Christy also asked, I hear a lot of focus on seniors and mobility, and you kind of mentioned because, I mean, it is a huge number of, for just selling travel, there's a huge industry out there. But she was wondering, does this also encompass children with special needs as well?
Absolutely. We service people from infancy to, very mature adults. The only two items that we really don't have a direct impact on are those with autism and those that need dialysis. The reason being is for both of those cases, you need to have specially trained personnel, and especially with dialysis, you have to have very specialized medical equipment, and we just don't have that ability. but we do have resources. So if you're looking for something, please check with us first. And then if we can't do it, we can definitely provide you with a resource, because we do know how tough it is to find resources. I do want to backtrack just one second. When it comes to autism, we do support a company that does, if you might have heard of them, they're called Autism on the Seas. And we support them in that if there is any special equipment or food or toys or anything particular that family needs, we deliver that to the ship for them. I don't know if they do land vacations. I know they really concentrate on cruises, and they book 50 groups at a time. They have a huge number for like a year and a half out, and then you would book into them. But we support them in doing their deliveries and so forth.
Thank you. You actually answered one of the questions that was asked. So awesome about working with Autism of the Seas. So another question here is, do you have any tips for locating available accessible space on cruise ships with ease? So in particular, in this case, is accessible to accommodate bariatric sized equipment. So how do you go about finding those right spaces?
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, it sounds like they're looking for ways to figure out which cabins are accessible.
Correct.
Am I understanding? Okay.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me first start by saying again, on our website we have what we call our cruise accessibility portal or area, and we have every ocean-going vessel out there, as well as we've been starting to put some of the river cruise vessels out there as well. And each ship has its accessibility demographics out there, if you will. So we get that information from the cruise line. As long as what they tell us is accurate, that's what we put out there. So you'll know exactly how many accessible cabins there are. We've been trying to go back and kind of detail that a little bit more as to how many are, balcony, so forth and so on. But as you may or may not know, there aren't a lot. So that's why it's really important to have that conversation up front, so that you can get one of those if you need it right away. It also talks about the different types of accessibility throughout the ship, if we've been able to get that information. So, what dining might look like, what accommodations are in the entertainment venue, like the theater or whatever. So we do try to put that out there if we can get that information. We also have out there, if you're certified with this, you can print a cruise inspection sheet, and it covers a wide variety of special needs. And so when you go and do a ship inspection, you can check off and kind of see, just in case the information we have is not 100% up to date. They might have put the ship in dry dock and done some things that we didn't know about or whatever. So you can inspect it for yourself and say, okay, well, this is what the accessible cabin has in it. This is how big it is. Or this is the accommodations they've made for the hearing impaired or the vision impaired. So those checklists are out there, and I have a lot of advisors that use those.
Awesome. That's great to know. Marion asked, do you rent a portable bed rail? She said, I have someone who just needs a little extra help getting in and out of bed. So does SNG provide that?
We do have bed rails. Again, we have, I don't know that I mentioned it in the presentation, so I apologize. We're in 215 cities and 68 countries around the world, but we don't have the equipment, all the same equipment in all the ports. It just depends on, or all the cities, excuse me. It just depends on how active that particular city might be. So your best bet when it comes to very specific questions, if you have a particular question like that, is to check with our reservations team, because they'll be able to tell you for your exact location, what's available, what it would cost, and so forth.
Awesome. And you kind of answered this one already, but someone asked, does SNG provide equipment in other countries? Which, yes, but she specifically was asking in Europe and South Pacific.
South Pacific, no, not at this time, not really. Europe, we do a lot of Europe. We do all of Italy, all of Greece. We can do the majority of land in Europe. So again, it's a matter of checking in. Now, sometimes, I'm not going to say that we can do this a lot, in the South Pacific area. But, well, for example, we are in Australia, but as far as the islands and so forth, might be a little sketchy. But if you're doing a cruise, we might be able to do what we call a preload. So we might be able to load the equipment on somewhere else and have it available. I can't promise that for everywhere, but that's just something that you can check. When you call in our reservations team, they can check into that and see if it's possible to have that equipment there for them.
Awesome, great. And yeah, someone else asked too, if they were who they need to contact, in there. So it's basically just reach out to your reservations team.
Yep.
They need that.
Which
so perfect.
If you wrote down our contact information, it's just the 800 number without the extension.
Perfect. And one thing to mention on it too, because I know someone else asked about the website, and that will be sent out after this as well. So the email that you'll get with the recording of this, we listed the website on there, and then you can get that contact information. But if there's anything too, feel free to reach out to us at Travefy, and we can get the correct information for you as well. So this is an interesting question. We have one from Carol said, I have a client who has low vision wanting to do an organized tour in Tasmania, a coach tour. Do you have any tips on working with clients with these needs or any coach companies that specialize in this need?
I have to be honest with you. We've been in business over 12 years, almost 13 years now. And the vast majority of that time, we have worked with the cruise lines. We are now expanding our land offerings, and so that's one of the reasons. That's one of my jobs, is to try and work with different land vendors. But it's a little difficult for us because in 215 cities that I mentioned, the vast majority of those, we have our own equipment there. So we can track each piece of equipment by its inventory number. We know exactly what your clients have in those cities. So in order to get a partnership with someone that works with our equipment in a particular location, that takes a while to vet people. So at this point, I don't have anybody there. What I would recommend you to do is send me an email or send an email to the agents box, and I can ask my director of operations to see if she might know of anyone. Africa right now is not a place that we are really prominent in. So it makes it a little bit more difficult, but she might know of someone that we can refer you to, absolutely.
Awesome, perfect. Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions on specific countries or regions. So do you have, because someone asked here, and this is a good question, is do you have on the website, on Special Needs Group website, do you have a map maybe, or would they just want to call into the reservations team?
We do have a list of all of the locations that we service on our website. But if you don't see it there, then I would call the reservations team, because it doesn't mean that we can't arrange something. There may be some extra fees involved just because it's a special request, but it never hurts to ask. And we always say, please do ask us before you say it can't be done to your client. I mean, it may not be feasible, but you don't know until you ask. So as I said, we have a list out there on the website. If you don't see it there, check with the reservations team. We might be able to do something.
Awesome, thanks. And so another question here, and we actually had this one before the webinar, so we had a lot of people very excited for this. And it's a really interesting question. Are there any special discounts or offers from travel providers, like maybe airlines or hotels, for special needs clients that agents can look for?
Typically, no. Unfortunately not.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. I would say, your better bet, if you're looking for hotels, your better bet would be to stick with some of the larger ones, and check their websites. But I have not really ever come across any. But again, I don't book travel, so it's not as prominent in my life, if you will, for me to know that. I can just tell you from talking with people that have disabilities and other travel advisors, that it really doesn't exist that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and hopefully, in the future that will start to change and become more aware of, those needs and stuff. Another question
Exactly.
here, and yeah, and that's why this is why it's so awesome to have you here today too. Just really good topic. And so I have another question here for you, and you kind of have already answered it, so apologies if you say the same answer again. But Crystal asks, are there land tour companies that specialize in working with special needs clients, or is that kind of a one-off basis where they just need to maybe reach out to your team and check, or do you know of any land tour companies that will help specialize in those?
It really is more of a one-off. There are some people that just out of their own need, they are disabled or have a special need, so they have kind of started to take their knowledge and recommend places for people. But as far as commercial opportunities to find a tour company or so forth, they're few and far between. That is very true. Most, I don't want to name any names, but most tour companies would do this more as a one-off. Now, if you had a group together, you're putting together a group, then they would make accommodations. For example, I talked with a company. I was at a trade show over the weekend, and I talked with a company, and they do charter buses and bus tours, those kinds of things all over the country, and they have 5 buses that are ADA compliant. So they do have those available. It just depends on where they are at what time and doing what tour. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, for having, a whole fleet of buses around the country to have 5 that are ADA compliant. It's a challenge. We do have a long way to go, but, the more people that know and start requesting things, the more power we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that too, I have two last questions here that I think will round us out. So one is from Carol, and she asks, can Australia agents sign up for the SNG Advocate Program?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome, perfect. And
Anyone
then
around the world can.
yay, yeah, anyone on here. It's exciting. And then I have one last question for you to round us out here. So this can be anything, but I'd love to hear kind of a really cool story that maybe you have personal story working with clients where you kind of were able to help, give them this amazing opportunity to travel because you were able to, help provide special equipment or provide that special. So do you have any stories that just kind of come to mind that you'd like to share?
I have a couple. One is kind of more out there. It's a very unique situation, but yet you never know, and it kind of shows you what can be done if the heart is in the right place. We had a client who was a special needs gentleman. He had a service dog. The dog itself was kind of special needs because it could only eat a certain kind of dog food, and he was going on a cruise from the U.S. to Europe. And unfortunately, the customs officials would not allow him to bring that dog food on the ship with him. So he was in a panic, and he contacted his travel advisor, who was not able to source the food for him. Neither was the cruise line that he was on. They contacted us, and we had to find it in Europe because we couldn't ship it over there. So we did find it in Europe, and we got it to him on the ship in Italy. So he was fine. That's kind of a very unique situation, but kind of shows you something that really hasn't happened yet. Another story, but it just gave me goosebumps and made me feel so good. I was at this trade show just this past weekend, and I had an older couple come up to me, and both of them were leaning very heavily on canes and walking sticks. And they started to tell me that they were going on their very first cruise this December, and that they were going on a Holland ship. And I started talking to them and telling them, about cruising and stuff like that, because they didn't know very much. And I said, I don't, I'm not trying to push anything on you just because I'm standing here with equipment and so forth, but I just need to ask you how ambulatory are you? And she said, well, I'm better than my husband, who was standing right there with her. And I said, well, I just need to let you know these ships are big. And she kind of rolls her eyes at me. She goes, yeah, but how big are they? And I said, well, the ship you're going on is going to be about 900 feet, a football field. And I said, you might have your cabin on one end and the dining room might be at the other end, and you want to do that 3 times a day plus whatever else you want to do. I said, you might want to think about doing a scooter. I would have even suggested a wheelchair if one of them was more ambulatory than the other. But I said, you might want to suggest, you might want to think about scooters because you're going to have a lot more freedom. And their eyes just lit up like, oh my gosh, we never even thought about that. How cool would that be? I mean, just letting people know that services exist. I talked to so many people at that trade show that said, I didn't know this existed. My sister has a child with Down syndrome. This would have been good for my dad who passed, but, he quit traveling because he needed oxygen or because he didn't know that he could get a scooter and get around easier. So to me, it's more about getting the word out there. I call them paychecks of the heart when you can change somebody's life like that. And it truly is, to me, more about that. That's why our tagline is delivering an accessible world.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's so cool. And I think just this webinar alone is just going to change up, I mean, for sure, at least one life, knowing, not knowing, oh, I can do this, or you don't have to stop traveling. That's so incredible. So I just want to say thank you so much again for sharing all of this and all this knowledge that's just opens a whole new door for so many travel agents. And thank you everybody as well for joining us. And again, look for that email coming after this with the contact information and the website as well for special needs group. And I guess just thank you again, Karen. We really, really appreciate you sharing all this with us today.
Well, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. Everyone, I hope you look into the certification. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to us, to our reservations team, or to myself and Jimmy, the contact information, or through Stephanie at Travefy Academy, whichever you're more comfortable with. But I'm more than happy to help you change some lives.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Karen. And thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Everybody have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.